She told her family she didn't feel safe. A 23-year-old nursing home worker in Philadelphia heads out for her evening shift, but never makes it back home. Days later, police receive an anonymous tip, and what they uncover in the woods behind an abandoned school will shake an entire community. What exactly happened to KadaScott? And who is the man accused of taking her away from everything she loved? Stay with us as we peel back every hidden layer of this chilling case. Before we dive in, what would you do if you told your family you didn't feel safe, and they still encouraged you to go to work? Let us know in the comments. KadaScott was 23 years old, young, determined, and full of quiet dreams. She lived in Philadelphia's Germantown section, on the 8300 block of Rodney Street, a neighborhood lined with old trees and narrow sidewalks where everyone seemed to know each other by name. To her friends, Kada was the kind of person who brightened a room without trying. She was known for her warmth, her laughter, and her love for caring for people, qualities that made her perfect for her job. By day she was a daughter, a sister, and a friend. By night, she worked the overnight shift at an assisted living facility, caring for the elderly, patients she treated like her own family. Those close to her say she had bigger plans. She wanted to advance her nursing career, maybe start a business one day, the kind of goals that made her parents proud and her coworkers admire her. But in the days before her disappearance, something changed. Family members remember a shift in her tone, the way her voice carried a quiet unease. She told them she didn't feel safe. There had been strange phone calls. Someone had been harassing her, sending unwanted messages that made her nervous. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Her mother later said, "She told us she felt uncomfortable, like something was off." Still, on the night of October 4, 2025, Kada tried to push through the fear. Around 9:45 p.m., she left her home on Rodney Street, got into her car, and drove toward the assisted living facility for her overnight shift. It was just another routine night, or at least it was supposed to be. The facility was quiet when she arrived. Security cameras showed her car pulling into the lot, headlights flashing once before fading into darkness. She parked, clocked in, and began her duties. But sometime during the night something shifted. Something, or someone, interrupted that routine. By morning, Kada's co-workers noticed her absence. Her shift had ended, but she hadn't returned to her car. She didn't call home. She didn't answer her phone. Her belongings, everything except her phone and iPad, were left behind. To those who knew her, it made no sense. She wasn't the type to disappear. She was responsible, caring, the kind of person who called her mother after every shift. So when the hours turned into a full day of silence, panic began to set in. Her family searched. They called her friends. They retraced her route. But there was nothing, not a sound, not a trace. It was as if the city itself had swallowed her whole. Imagine finishing your long shift, getting into your car ready to head home, and somewhere between the parking lot and your front door, you vanish. What would you do if that sense of unease, that quiet fear, turned out to be right? For Kada's family, it was a nightmare they never thought they'd face. Because for her, silence was never normal. No call, no message, nothing. And deep down they knew something terrible had happened. When KadaScott didn't return home that night, her family knew something was wrong. It wasn't like her to go silent, not for an hour, not even for a few minutes after work. She always texted her mother when she got off her shift, always let someone know she was safe. By morning, her phone went straight to voicemail. Her mother tried again. Her friends tried too. Nothing. Then came the realization that chilled them. Kada's car was still sitting at the assisted living facility parking lot, exactly where she'd left it the night before. The driver's seat undisturbed. Her uniform and personal belongings inside. But Kada was gone. Detectives began piecing together the first hours of her disappearance. There was no sign of a struggle inside the facility. No footage showing her leaving the building on her own. Her phone and iPad were missing, but there had been no new activity. No calls, no social media logins, no pings. It was as if the devices had gone dark the same night she did. Investigators printed missing person flyers, plastering them across Philadelphia. Bus stops, corner stores, light poles. Her face, smiling, hopeful, innocent, now a haunting reminder of a growing mystery. The community began to rally. Volunteers gathered near her family's home. Search teams combed wooded areas, fields, and vacant lots across the Germantown and Mount Airy neighborhoods, hoping for any trace of the young woman. On October 10th, searchers focused on the Auberry Arboretum, a vast green space in northwest Philadelphia known for its winding trails and dense woods. K-9 units scoured the terrain, officers called her name through the trees, but the search ended with nothing. No scent. No sign. No clue. Days passed. Every lead seemed to fade into silence. Detectives were growing frustrated, until October 18th when the call came in. An anonymous tip. According to police, it was very specific. The caller described an area behind a long-abandoned school, the old Ada H. Lewis Middle School, tucked away near the Auberry Arboretum. It was the kind of place kids dared each other to visit. Boarded windows, overgrown weeds, a crumbling fieldstone wall separating it from the nearby woods. That afternoon, detectives and crime scene officers arrived on site. Yellow tape fluttered in the wind as they moved through the brush. The air was heavy, the ground soft from recent rain. Within minutes, one of the officers noticed something unusual, a freshly turned soil. They knelt down, brushed aside leaves, and the grim reality began to surface. A shallow grave. Inside, human remains. Nearby, items scattered in the dirt, a pair of glasses, an iPad case, and a bank card, all believed to belong to KadaScott. Deputy Commissioner John Stanford addressed reporters shortly after. He spoke cautiously, saying, "We're not going to confirm it's Kada until the medical examiner does. But based on what we've recovered, we believe this is connected to her case." Behind the official tone, the emotion was unmistakable. For nearly 2 weeks, the Scott family had held on to hope, now that hope was slipping through their fingers. News spread quickly through Philadelphia. Crowds gathered near the school fence line, watching as investigators photographed the scene. Neighbors described seeing police cars arrive by the dozen, headlights flashing, K-9 units pacing near the trees. Reporters whispered to each other, was this where Kada's story ended? Inside the command tent, detectives compared notes, retracing every movement from October 4th to the night she vanished. Who had contacted her last? Who knew her routine well enough to find her that late at night? And why did the anonymous tipster know exactly where to look? In that moment, the case shifted, from a desperate search, to a criminal investigation. Someone had taken KadaScott's life, and buried her in a quiet corner of the city she once called home. But as detectives sifted through evidence, one question refused to fade. Who led her into that forested trap, and why? In the days following the grim discovery, detectives from the Philadelphia Police Department began piecing together a complex web of events, one that would soon reveal a pattern of obsession, fear, and violence. As investigators retraced KadaScott's final hours, one detail kept surfacing again and again: the phone calls. Friends told police that in the week before she vanished, Kada had been receiving a series of disturbing messages and calls. She had confided to family members that someone she knew wouldn't leave her alone. She told them, "I don't feel safe." But no one could have imagined how quickly that fear would turn real. Detectives began digging into her call records and social media activity. What they found led them straight to a name: Kian King, a 21-year-old man from Philadelphia, believed to be the last person in contact with her on the night she disappeared. At first, he appeared calm, cooperative, but the deeper investigators looked, the more troubling the picture became. Police obtained surveillance footage from the nursing home's exterior cameras. Though the angles were limited, they confirmed Kada's vehicle, a dark-colored sedan, parked outside at the start of her shift. Hours later, there was no sign of her leaving on foot. However, witnesses in the area reported seeing a gold 1999 Toyota Camry lingering near the facility that same night. It was registered to Kian King. The connection grew stronger. Detectives tracked King's movements using cell tower data and nearby surveillance footage. His phone activity placed him near the nursing home around the same time Kada vanished, and later near the wooded area behind the abandoned Ada H. Lewis Middle School, the same area where her remains would later be found. By October 14th, 10 days after Kada's disappearance, police made their move. Kian King was arrested, charged with kidnapping, unlawful restraint, and stalking. Authorities described him as a person of interest in Kada's disappearance, though at that point they still had not found her body. But this wasn't the first time King's name had appeared in a police report. Earlier that same year, he had been accused of kidnapping and assault in a separate case. Those charges were later dropped when the victim didn't appear in court. A missed opportunity, one that now echoed with tragic weight. Let's break down the timeline. October 4, 2025. KadaScott disappears after leaving her overnight shift at the assisted living facility. Her car is found in the parking lot. Her phone goes silent. The investigation begins. October 14th. Kian King is taken into custody by Philadelphia police and charged in connection to Kada's disappearance. Detectives continue searching for her, hoping she might still be alive. October 18th, 4 days later, police receive a detailed anonymous tip leading them to the wooded area behind the abandoned Ada H. Lewis Middle School. There, they uncover a shallow grave containing human remains and personal items belonging to KadaScott. Days later, DNA testing confirms what the family already feared: the remains are hers. As the timeline came together, a dark narrative began to unfold. Police said that all roads at this point lead to him, every clue, every signal, every last piece of digital evidence pointing toward one man, Kian King. Detectives described the case as disturbing, meticulous, and personal. This wasn't random. It was targeted. Someone had been watching Kada, and waiting. She was only 23. A young woman with dreams, with plans, with a future ahead of her, stolen in a moment of senseless cruelty. And now, as police unraveled the truth behind those final phone calls, they began to ask the question that would define the rest of the investigation. What did Kian King really want with KadaScott? What red flags do you see in this timeline? Were there warning signs that should have been caught earlier? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear them. In the aftermath of Kian King's arrest, detectives began digging into his past, and what they uncovered painted a far more disturbing picture than anyone expected. Then a video surfaced. A chilling piece of footage shared on social media. A man, said by investigators to be King, captured on camera peering through a woman's window in the middle of the night. The figure lingers motionless, watching. The victim, whose identity remains protected, recorded it in fear. That clip, unsettling, silent, and invasive, became a key piece in understanding the kind of threat Kada may have faced before she disappeared. Investigators now believe this wasn't a random act. It was part of a pattern, one that began long before October 4th. Court documents later revealed that earlier in the year, Kian King had been arrested in a separate case involving kidnapping and assault. According to police reports, he allegedly abducted another woman, but those charges were dropped after the victim failed to appear in court. That decision, now under intense public scrutiny, may have cost KadaScott her life. The district attorney's office admitted the system had failed. One official stated, "We could have done better." It was a moment of accountability, but for Kada's family, no apology could bring her back. By mid-October, Kian King was formally charged in connection with KadaScott's disappearance. Prosecutors listed counts of kidnapping, unlawful restraint, stalking, and related offenses. His bail was set at $2.5 million, ensuring he would remain in custody as investigators built their case. Inside the courtroom, reporters described King as quiet, distant, eyes fixed on the floor, barely speaking. His defense attorney declined to comment. Outside, Kada's family stood together, wrapped in grief and disbelief. They had known about the harassing calls, the messages, the growing sense of fear that Kada felt. But they never imagined it would end like this. Detectives now began focusing on motive. What drove a 21-year-old man to allegedly stalk and kidnap a young woman he once knew? Was it rejection? Was it control? Or something even darker, an escalating obsession that spiraled into violence? Every piece of evidence pointed toward a calculated pursuit. The phone records, the surveillance patterns, the haunting clip of him peering through the window. It all suggested that King's fixation on Kada had reached a breaking point. Investigators also began re-examining other reports linked to King. They believed there might be other potential victims, women who had felt unsafe but never came forward. Authorities publicly urged anyone with similar experiences to contact the police. The statement was clear. If you've had any encounters with this man, please come forward. We believe there may be more. For the public, this was a shocking revelation. The idea that a pattern of stalking and intimidation had been unfolding quietly in Philadelphia, largely unnoticed. For Kada's family, it was a cruel reminder that her fears had been real and ignored. KadaScott had done everything right. She told people she didn't feel safe. She went to work. She tried to live her life, and still she vanished. The unanswered question haunted everyone: could this tragedy have been prevented? But as the investigation continued to unfold, new information was about to surface, evidence that would shift the tone of the entire case. And just when it seemed the pieces might finally align, the family got news no one expected. By the evening of October 19th, the question that haunted Philadelphia finally had an answer. Authorities announced that DNA testing confirmed what everyone feared: the remains recovered behind the abandoned Ada H. Lewis Middle School belonged to 23-year-old KadaScott. A 99.9% match to her parents. The search was officially over. At a press conference that day, Deputy Commissioner John Stanford spoke carefully, acknowledging the heartbreak that had swept through the city. He thanked the community for their efforts, the volunteers who searched, and the neighbors who refused to give up hope. But beneath the official tone, grief filled the air. A young woman's life, full of light, promise, and compassion, had been stolen. In the following days, Kada's family gathered at a vigil not far from her home in East Germantown. Friends, neighbors, and co-workers from the assisted living facility where she worked came together, holding candles and photos. They spoke about who Kada was, not as a headline but as a person. Her father, Mr. Scott, told reporters quietly, "It's been extremely difficult. We keep faith." Her mother couldn't hold back tears as she described her daughter's kindness, how she loved caring for people, how she wanted to become a nurse. They said she had a gentle laugh, a calming presence, and a deep sense of responsibility, both at work and at home. The tragedy didn't just break one family, it rippled across the city. From Philadelphia's nursing homes to college campuses, conversations about women's safety took on new urgency. Community leaders and advocates demanded reform. Stronger protection for victims of stalking, faster response times for missing person reports, and better follow-through on prior violent offenses. The district attorney's office admitted publicly that the system had failed Kada. Had the earlier kidnapping and assault case against Kian King been handled differently, had the victim in that case felt safe enough to testify, maybe things could have ended another way. Those words, "We could have done better," became a haunting refrain throughout the investigation. Inside the Philadelphia Criminal Justice Center, the case against King continued. He remained in custody, held on $2.5 million bail, facing charges of kidnapping, stalking, unlawful restraint, and other related offenses tied to Kada's disappearance and death. The district attorney's office has said that additional charges may follow, depending on forensic results and ongoing investigations. Outside the courtroom, members of the community gathered again, holding signs, wearing shirts with Kada's picture. Many of them didn't even know her personally, but they saw themselves in her story. A young woman doing her job, following her routine, and still becoming a victim of something horrific. For them, this wasn't just about justice for Kada. It was about preventing another tragedy like hers. Across social media, hashtags like #JusticeForKada began circulating. A GoFundMe campaign was launched to support her family and funeral expenses. Thousands donated. Thousands more shared messages of support. And at the bottom of every post, one message echoed over and over: she told them she didn't feel safe. The city of Philadelphia, a place known for its toughness and resilience, found itself grieving collectively. Mothers held their daughters closer. Friends checked in on one another. And many quietly asked, how many more stories like Kada's will it take before something changes? In the courtroom and in the streets, questions linger. Could the prior case against King have been handled differently? How many other victims before Kada went unheard? And will justice, in its full form, ever truly be served? KadaScott's life may have been cut short, but her story has ignited a movement, a call for accountability, compassion, and change. She's not just another statistic. She's a reminder of what happens when warnings go unheard. What do you think is the most important change police should make after this case? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Philadelphia, a city that's seen triumph and tragedy, love and loss. But in October 2025, it became the backdrop for a story that reminded us. Sometimes evil doesn't strike in dark alleys or abandoned corners. Sometimes it finds you in broad daylight, on an ordinary drive home, when you least expect it. KadaScott was 23 years old, born and raised right here in Philadelphia. Those who knew her say she was soft-spoken but strong, the kind of young woman who carried peace wherever she went. She worked in assisted living, caring for the elderly, often picking up extra shifts when others couldn't. Her friends described her as the dependable one, always early to work, always smiling, never complaining. Her family said she dreamed of becoming a nurse. She had started researching nursing programs and saving money little by little. On weekends, she spent time with her nieces and nephews, taking them for ice cream or watching movies. She had a close bond with her mother, the kind of bond where they'd text every morning just to say, "I love you." That's who Kada was. A daughter, a sister, a friend, someone who made other people's lives better. Her final day began like any other. A work shift, a phone call, a drive home. And somewhere between the familiar streets of East Germantown and the quiet neighborhood near Auberry Arboretum, everything changed. Police say the timeline still leaves gaps. Phone records trace her last communication around October 4th, the day she was reported missing. Her car was found abandoned, keys still inside. The same neighborhood where, not long ago, a man named King had faced serious allegations that eerily mirror the events that followed. Investigators believe Kada may have been stalked, possibly followed for days or weeks before her disappearance. The footage showing King peering into a window, the chilling pattern of behavior, the prior assault charge, all of it painted a picture of escalation. A man whose past offenses foreshadowed something much darker. For many in Philadelphia, Kada's story became a reflection of a bigger question. How safe are we really when the system misses the warning signs? Because this wasn't just one tragedy. It was the result of a pattern. Ignored red flags, delayed actions, and a justice system stretched thin. Kada's voice was heard. She told those close to her that she didn't feel safe. But even when that warning reached the right ears, the outcome still ended in tragedy. And that's what hurts the most. In the aftermath, investigators have continued their work. Search warrants, forensic testing, phone data analysis. Every new piece of evidence adds another fragment to the story, but still one question remains. Why her? Was it chance? Obsession? Revenge? Or was it something deeper, the manifestation of unchecked violence that could have been prevented? For now, King remains behind bars, his bail set at $2.5 million. Prosecutors have not ruled out additional charges, including homicide. And while the court moves slowly, Kada's family continues to push for change, stronger protections for women, better support for victims of stalking, and accountability from those sworn to protect. At the site where her remains were found, a small memorial now stands, flowers, candles, and handwritten notes. One reads, "You deserved better." Another, "Rest in peace, angel." Each message carries the same silent truth, that her story could have been anyone's story. And that's why people continue to share it. Kada's story reminds us how quickly a routine shift, a familiar drive home, can turn into a nightmare. How often do we ignore that quiet voice inside us that whispers, "Something's not right"? In Kada's case, that voice was heard, but it wasn't enough to stop what came next. As investigators dig deeper, the unanswered questions remain. Why her? Why then? And will the man accused of taking her life face the full weight of justice? If you have any information, no matter how small, no matter how uncertain, you could be the missing piece someone needs. Because sometimes, justice depends on one person choosing to speak up. If this story touched you, share it. Because awareness brings accountability, and more eyes might bring more justice. Kada's memory deserves more than silence. She deserves to be remembered not just for how she died, but for how she lived, kind, hardworking, compassionate, and full of faith. What do you believe happened that night? Drop your theory below, and if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell. Join us for the next chapter, as we uncover more true crime stories that matter.